International consulting giant Wood Mackenzie says the global energy trade is headed for the biggest disruption since the creation of OPEC during the 1970s. And the time is ripe for the world's major energy exporters to accelerate the energy transition, and mastering the hydrogen trade could make a difference. I'm going to talk to Wood Mackenzie Research Director Prakash Sharma. So welcome to the interview, Prakash.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having us.
Well, look, this is all I've heard in the last few months is hydrogen, hydrogen, hydrogen. Everybody seems this is a hot topic. And so what can you tell us about trade in hydrogen? How much do we have now, and where do you see hydrogen trade going in the next few years?
So thank you again. So hydrogen is having its day in the sun. So what we are seeing now is many companies, energy producers, energy consumers, industrial companies, and power utilities trying to build a project pipeline, trying to test this technology, and with a view that this technology would play a greater role longer term in the energy transition. And there are three main reasons for believing in that. So one is hydrogen allows you, so especially green hydrogen, it allows you to integrate renewables better with the grid. It allows you to increase the penetration of renewables in the energy system. The second is hydrogen is required to abate difficult sectors, so the likes of steel, heavy-duty trucking, heating, transport, shipping, aviation, etc. And third is basically for those countries where domestic renewables or electrification is not enough to meet their climate goals. So that's where hydrogen becomes very important from a trade perspective. Currently, the trade is not there, so there is no international trade of hydrogen at the moment. But then if you look at the pipeline and also the ambitions that various countries have, and also some of the partnerships and alliances that are being announced, it kind of points towards a hydrogen trade taking shape, say sometime late 2020s onwards. And we think longer term, it could really become and play a huge role, almost 1/3 of the global energy trade as it exists today.
Now, just earlier today, Prakash, I was interviewing a Canadian hydrogen expert, and he was of the opinion that Alberta they would start their hydrogen industry or expand their existing hydrogen industry, manufacturing blue hydrogen, so out of making it out of natural gas. And then over time, as the cost of electrolyzers fell, that they would gradually transition into green hydrogen. Is that going to be a common strategy globally?
Likely, very, very likely. So in countries where low cost natural gas is available, in countries where there is a domestic CCS capacity available, so the likes of Russia, Canada, and the Middle East. So these countries are going towards blue hydrogen first, and then over time transition to green hydrogen.
Right. And you were talking about, I think in your release, you've got a couple of scenarios. Your energy transition scenario, you're looking for a global demand in hydrogen between now and 2050 to double, and under the accelerated energy transition scenario to go up 6 times. Do you think that we're headed more towards the energy transition scenario or the accelerated scenario?
So that's an interesting question. So currently the world is kind of more towards what our base case is. So more towards a 2.5 degree, 2.7 degree warming. So currently, if you look at the policies, if you look at the energy system, if you look at the pace of investments and acceleration of adoption of new technology. So that tells us that we would see kind of a doubling of low carbon hydrogen in 30 years time. But then if you look at where the world needs to be, which is the Paris aligned goals, which is kind of 1.5 degree or well below 2 degree type warming pathways. So that does require hydrogen to nearly 5-6 times growth from where it is today. So because that is where all the major economies, so all the major energy consuming countries, the likes of Japan, South Korea, European Union, China, US, just taking a very closer look and just going all out towards building the hydrogen society, because it is such a versatile vector and carrier that it can decarbonize all sectors of the economy. So that is what hydrogen brings to the table, and that's why there's so much interest and attention towards it.
This is just an observation, Prakash, but I can see where if countries don't have a supply of natural gas now, so they may not get into the blue hydrogen game right away. But with electrolyzers expected to be, lower cost or economic by the late 2020s, then what country? I mean, almost every country can implement renewables to some extent, which means that they could make hydrogen if they wanted to. And doesn't that give them a certain amount of independence and energy security and the ability to end imports of oil and gas?
Absolutely. So it does help. And that's the whole premise about going for greater electrification of energy supply. But then not all countries are blessed with the sunshine and the wind speed that is needed, and not all countries have the land mass that is needed to create the wide kind of the solar farms and wind farms. So the likes of Japan and South Korea and also Singapore. So these countries where electrification cannot increase by itself. So they will need to import electrons or import green molecules from outside. So that's where the role of countries like Australia, the Middle East, where the sunshine is high and they've got a huge land mass to create the farms and the integrated projects that are needed to basically convert hydrogen into a carrier method to supply to these countries.
Now, your release made an interesting point that I hadn't thought of, and that is project developers, lenders, and buyers will be drawn to locations with a proven track record of exporting natural resources, ones that have suitable conditions for low-cost renewable electricity and potential for large-scale carbon capture. And I immediately thought of Alberta, because it has all of those. And in southern Alberta, they have very, very good wind and solar resource, and they're gearing up for large scale carbon capture. They've already got government policies and plans in place for that. Do you see other countries that have that same kind of advantage in those three areas?
Absolutely. So Australia, Middle East come to mind. Russia is also in that list, where the cost of natural gas is very low, the CCS potential is very high, and also the US. So US, the cost of natural gas is very low as well, and the US government is also trying to build the CCS potential as well, and providing some sort of policy support. So the recent announcement of 45Q and a kind of expansion of that to a higher kind of 85-degree carbon pricing support. So these are countries which are energy exporters today, but of a different commodity. So longer term, their experience in project execution, their experience and relationship with trading partners with the likes of Japan, South Korea, European Union will help them enter the market in a slightly seamless way. But then it is easier said than done, because there are still quite a few challenges to bring hydrogen to market from a trade perspective, from logistics perspective. So the likes of when you think of converting hydrogen into a carrier method, whether it's ammonia, methanol, liquefied hydrogen, and then bring it on purpose-built ships to basically take to the market, importing countries. So that value chain is not completely risk-free. So there are quite a few areas that company need to overcome, and there are quite a few challenges. So in my opinion, anyone who can overcome this logistical challenge is going to play a dominant role and will have the first mover advantage in hydrogen trade.
Now, you mentioned that the Middle East and Australia have 60% of the proposed export projects, and they'll be targeting markets in Europe and Northeast Asia. Where might North American producers, which markets might they be targeting? Export markets, I mean.
I mean, they would also be equally interested in both Northeast Asia and European Union. because they have the advantage. They have the trade routes, so they understand LNG sector very well. So the trade formation probably would be along the same lines. So the flows are still kind of not known yet. Because it is early days, but then if you look at the project pipeline and also the partnerships that are being announced, so European Union is having discussion with Australian companies, or having discussion with Middle East companies. Likewise, Japanese companies are also all over the place. They have a kind of a small scale investment in a Canadian blue hydrogen project as well. So these partnerships would become a proxy for some sort of a kind of a contracts, if I may say so, in the initial years, because that would unlock demand for trading market. But then longer term, once liquidity improves, when demand stabilizes, when the shipping and the logistical challenges are overcome, and those areas become much more easier to tackle, then basically it could be anyone's game. And there are not only these established energy exporters who have a role to play, but also emerging players, so the likes of countries in Africa, for example, so Morocco, Namibia, Chile, Brazil. So they could also take part in this transition, in this hydrogen economy, because they are blessed with sunshine. They have the required cost advantage, at least on hydrogen production side. So they could also become a possible potential exporters of hydrogen longer term.
Prakash, this will be the last question, and why don't I throw out the most difficult one, or at least the one you're going to need your crystal ball for. And that is, with the decline of fossil fuels and coal, oil, and gas, where, it's basically where Mother Nature has put them, and not every country has them or in abundance. But now when we're talking about wind and solar and geothermal and other sources of electricity, and then electrofuels, as you call them, does that not change the whole geopolitical alignment around energy, and who emerges as the next exporters and geopolitical powers? What's your take on that?
So if you look at the current landscape, so the existing incumbent energy exporters are also investing and testing and in the hydrogen projects. So they are keen to play that role. They are keen to make the transition. But then, as I said earlier, it also opens up opportunities for new players. So companies who were not blessed with upstream oil and gas resources or coal resources, so they could also be energy exporters just by monetizing the sunshine and the wind speed that they have got. That's one point. Second point is, if you look at the recent net zero pledges announcement, so Saudi Arabia is also now joining the club. Russia is also part of that club. So these are major exporters. And if they decide to shift away from and meet their net zero pledges longer term, which kind of 30, 40 years. So, and they are sitting on a huge kind of fossil fuel resources. So they also need to find new ways of protecting their export revenue. So of course, blue hydrogen gives them a pathway, but longer term, if they could try to build in green hydrogen or electrolysis-based hydrogen pipeline into the mix, then basically their transition to net zero probably would be easier. So it kind of works both ways, and it does change the overall landscape. But as things stand now, energy exporters, the incumbent exporters, seem to have an edge in the market. But then it could be anyone's game if other companies try to enter the play as well.
Prakash, thank you very much. Really appreciate your insights.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having us.